Hoover Institution's senior fellow and author of The End of Everything, Victor Davis Hanson. Victor, good to see you. You know, those of us who have followed this case, there is so much missing from the prosecution. One of them is in regard to falsified documents. There's been no evidence presented that Donald Trump falsified documents, that categorizing this payment as a legal expense wasn't justified. How do you see this case going, and how has the prosecution done? Have they met their burden?
Well, I mean, it matters that because it's so shockingly political that he deserves, of course, to be exonerated. But at this point, I think people have lost so much confidence in New York jurisprudence that even if they did find him guilty, the people wouldn't consider him guilty. And we've seen it boomerangs back on the people who are perpetrating this farce. I think it's really done damage to the New York justice system and indeed the United States system of jurisprudence. We're not going to go back to square one. I think they're going to pay a price for what they did in lost prestige and discredit they brought upon the legal profession. All three of these cases, E. Jean Carroll, James, and this latest one with Bragg, not to mention Willis and Smith.
And Victor, they essentially have gotten what they wanted. They have tied him up in court. He's spent a lot of time there. Jury deliberations are going to take a while now. They're not going to start until after the holiday weekend. So he stays embroiled in this, whatever the outcome is. You know, some would say, I think including yourself, why don't you try, to the Democrats, why don't you try to just win a fair and square election? Is it because you can't?
Well, I think we know. Yeah, we know the answer, that they've adopted a neo-socialist agenda on the border, on crime, on energy usage, on foreign policy, loss of deterrence. They can't even say that it was not a good, it was a good thing that this mass murderer in Tehran was killed. I mean, that's a bad thing to say maybe, but this man had killed so many innocent people. So they don't have a winning agenda, and everybody knows it, and they're looking at a disaster, and they're trying to use lawfare, as everybody knows. It's a continuation of the impeachments, the Russian disinformation, collusion, get him off the ballot, et cetera, any means necessary.
Any means necessary. But, Victor, let's look at this, because Trump's been tied up in court. Biden's been jetting around America trying to rev up voters. But if we're following the money, it looks like Trump is the one with the advantage. In April, Trump raised nearly $25 million more than Biden, taking the lead in monthly fundraising for the first time. But Victor, Trump's not out of the woods yet. You explain in your latest piece, quote, Bidenites believe they can reelect an unhealthy, unpopular, and unsuccessful president by any means necessary, and they may be right. What do you mean by that, Victor?
What I mean is that in 2021, Molly Ball wrote a Time essay, and it was scary. She used the word cabal and conspiracy, how there was a systematic effort to use over $1 billion to change the way people voted, to absorb the work of registers in states, to censor the media, to enlist government partnerships with social media like the FBI and Twitter. She detailed what she called, a woman of the left, a conspiracy. And she said it was quasi-legal. And she even mentioned they modulated the demonstrations in that terrible summer of 2020, depending on whether they felt they were at any times positive or negative for the Biden cause. So they control so much money, and they control so many institutions that they can call it legal, and maybe it is technically. But the Republicans, they have to be very careful about the mail-in balloting, the early balloting, when election day has been reduced to a construct where only 30% of the population votes on election day.
Yeah.
And those are mostly conservative. So I hope we're prepared.
Victor, let's move to this. The White House had a lot of work to do correcting Biden's speech to the NAACP the other day because it was riddled with mistakes. Watch this.
And when I was vice president, things were kind of bad during the pandemic. I'm humbled to receive this organization. It truly inspires me. Saving millions of families $800,000 in premium, $8,000 a year in premium. We're cracking down on corporate landlords who keep rents down. The mortality rate for black moms who have nearly 3 times more likely to die. He calls the erectionists who stormed Capitol Hill patriots. Donald Trump has said if he loses again in November, there will be, quote, bloodshed. The NAACP spirit endures.
Wow. I mean, the incompetence abounds. Your reaction?
Yeah, notice what they don't change. They don't change the outright lies. When he says that he inherited 9% inflation, they don't change that because they think it resonates. And you can see now why the Republicans really do want a transcript of Robert Herr's testimony that he had with Biden's testimony, because they don't trust this White House. They don't trust the government because they, in a Orwellian fashion, they edit, they airbrush things out that they think makes him look bad. And when they can't do that, they say that he has a stutter of the last 50 years. Anybody who listens to Joe Biden 50 years ago knows that he didn't have a stutter that altered the transcript of what he said. And so the final irony is when Donald Trump, I remember he said once, thank, and the transcript said thank with an A instead of an I, and they went ballistic. They said the White House is altering the transcripts of presidential speeches, and this is intolerable. But again, any means necessary. Yeah. That's what we're dealing with right now. This is a Jacobin, hardcore revolutionary movement.
You know, Victor, you make a good point. You mentioned the 9% inflation rate that Joe Biden says. He had 9% when he came into office. It was, I think, 1.4% actually when he came to office. He knows that's a lie. His administration knows it's a lie. The media knows it's a lie. But Joe Biden's smart enough to know that no one's going to call him out on that lie, so he can try to rewrite the history in the minds of the American voter that it wasn't Joe Biden's fault that caused all this inflation. He inherited it. And so he's just using the tools of the media that will never call him out.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and that's what I was trying to suggest, that they're not worried about the accuracy of the transcript, because if the transcript reflects something that's helpful or useful and is an abject lie, they won't change it.
Right.
They only change things that make him look ridiculous. That's what they're interested in, not the truth or falsity. Only things that make him look like a buffoon. Then they'll change it. But if it was a buffoon lie, they may not, if they found it was more useful to advance and promote the lie than to make him look silly. That's what's so scary about what they're doing.
If you press them, they make excuses for him, too.
That's
it's
right.
okay.
Well,
he made a mistake. Victor Davis Hanson, thank you so much. Great to see you.